They told me the trip was canceled, not postponed, not maybe next year, just canceled. My daughter's voice sounded calm on the phone, like she was telling me the grocery store was out of milk. Too much going on at work, Mom. Schedules are crazy. We'll keep it simple this year. Maybe do something local. I said I understood. I always say that. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone longer than I needed to. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming and the clock ticking on the wall. The same clock my husband hung years ago, back when Sundays were loud and someone was always asking for help. I told myself it was fine. Trips get canceled. Families adjust. Life moves on. I made tea, put a pastry on a plate, sat down at the table. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't open the picture right away. I saw the light first bright, cheerful, almost aggressive. Then I saw the blue, sky blue, ocean blue, the kind of blue you don't get at home. 4 faces smiled back at me. My daughter, laughing under a wide sun hat. My son-in-law holding a drink, relaxed in a way he never is at home. My grandson grinning like the world hadn't disappointed him yet. My granddaughter standing in the water, throwing a peace sign like this moment mattered. Maui. I felt it before I understood it. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been told the trip wasn't happening. Now here they were, together, on a beach, without me. I stared at the screen until the tea went cold, until the pastry stayed untouched, until something heavy settled in my chest and refused to move. I hadn't been excited about Hawaii. I'd been excited about being invited. That's what people forget when they're younger. It's not about where you're going. It's about knowing someone thought of you when they made the plan. I never asked to go. My daughter brought it up months earlier. A big family trip, she said. All of us together. You'd love it. We'll take care of you. You and your granddaughter can do spa days. I remember sitting on my couch that day, staring at my reflection in the dark TV screen. Me on a plane again, walking barefoot on warm sand. It sounded ridiculous and wonderful, so I prepared quietly. I started walking more in the mornings, telling myself it was good for my knees. I bought a sun hat navy blue, soft ribbon. I let myself imagine sunsets without feeling foolish for it. Then the cancellation came. Polite. Rush. Final. And now this. I zoomed in on the photo without meaning to. Behind my grandson's shoulder, I recognized the pool, the curved edge, the ocean stretching past it. The exact image my daughter once showed me when she was picking the hotel. You can watch the sunset from the water, she'd said. You'll love it. I closed the app. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they hadn't meant for me to see it yet. Maybe they were going to explain. They didn't. I didn't call anyone either. Not my daughter. Not my son-in-law. Not my granddaughter. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there listening to the clock tick counting seconds that suddenly felt personal. By evening, more photos showed up. My daughter holding a plate of shrimp, laughing. My granddaughter reading a book I gave her last Christmas, stretched out in a hammock. My son-in-law smiling too wide at the bar. That's when the truth landed. They didn't forget me. They didn't run out of room. They didn't worry I couldn't handle it. They chose not to bring me. That's when I cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just tears sliding down my face while the house stayed quiet, like it didn't want to get involved. It wasn't just about the trip. It never is. It was about every time I'd been postponed. Every time I'd been helpful, but not included. Every time I'd been good enough to support their lives, but not welcome inside them. The next morning, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't bake. I didn't do the small routines that usually help the day pass without thinking too much. Instead, I opened the file cabinet in the hallway, the one my husband labeled important in his careful handwriting. I pulled out envelopes I hadn't looked at in years and laid them across the dining table. The first receipt was for my granddaughter's summer camp. I remember the call clearly. My daughter crying. She's been looking forward to it for months. Mom, I said yes before she finished the sentence. Next came dental bills, tuition deposits, ballet lessons, car repairs that were temporary, pages of dates and amounts written in my own handwriting. Promise. Next month, I'll pay you back. By the time I stacked the papers, my hands were shaking not from anger, but from recognition. I hadn't been unlucky. I'd been convenient. I sat back and stared at the total. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. The number wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing how normal this had all felt to me. I closed the folder and stood up slowly, knees aching, walked to the phone, called my bank. The woman on the line was polite, efficient. When she asked if I wanted to cancel the automatic transfers, my voice didn't shake. Yes, I said, and the other one too. She asked if there was anything else. I paused, then said, I want to open a new account, just in my name. I wrote the account number down carefully and placed it on top of the receipts, on top of the promises that never came back to me. They went to Hawaii without me, but that was the last thing they'd take. That night, I barely slept, not because I was angry, but because my mind kept replaying the images. Their smiles, their ease, the way my granddaughter held the book I wrapped for her. They hadn't just gone without me. They'd gone with the best parts of me. By morning, I made coffee and forgot to drink it. The kitchen smelled like toast I never made. I opened my phone again, not to torture myself, but to see what else I'd missed. A short video of laughing at a luau. A picture of breakfast plates lined up like a postcard. And then a comment. Where's Grandma? No reply underneath. I closed the app, The mail came later. Bills. A flyer. A bank letter. Nothing kind. That afternoon, I walked to the park down the street. I used to take my grandson there when he was little. He collected leaves and pretended they were secret messages. I always played along. The bench by the pond was still there, rusted now. I sat and watched people pass by without noticing me. I thought about calling my daughter, just to ask why, not to argue. I don't raise my voice, but I already knew the answer. We thought it would be too much for you. We didn't think you'd want to go, as if wanting expires with age. That evening, my granddaughter texted, "Hawaii is amazing. Miss you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, "Hope you're having a good time. Love you." I didn't ask why I wasn't there. The next morning, I pulled out the blue binder labeled legal. Inside were the papers that gave my daughter control if anything happened to me. I looked at that page longer than everything else. Then I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I said I wanted to change things. When I left her office later, the air felt lighter, like I'd finally set something down. That night, I set the table for one and didn't apologize to the empty chairs. They said the trip was canceled. They smiled on a beach without me. But something had shifted, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't ignoring it. The silence didn't hit all at once. It crept in slowly, like fog rolling over a familiar street. At first, I kept expecting it to lift. A call, a message, someone saying, "Hey, we messed up. We should have told you." Nothing came. My phone stayed quiet on the counter, face down, like it didn't want to look at me either. For years, silence used to scare me. Silence meant I'd done something wrong. It meant someone was disappointed. It meant I needed to fix something. This silence felt different. This one felt chosen. The morning after I called the lawyer, I woke up before my alarm. No reason, no urgency, just that strange awareness that something had shifted and my body hadn't caught up yet. I made coffee and actually drank it this time. Stood by the window while it cooled just enough not to burn my tongue. Outside, the street looked the same as always. Same cracked sidewalk. Same mailbox leaning slightly to the left. But I felt different standing there, like I wasn't waiting anymore. Around 10, the phone rang. I knew who it was before I looked. My son-in-law. I let it ring, not out of spite, not to make a point. I just didn't feel like rushing toward a conversation that was going to ask more of me. Then it offered. He called again an hour later. Then my daughter. I watched the names light up the screen and fade. Each time, I felt a small tug in my chest. Old habits pulling at me. The part of me that wanted to answer, to smooth things over, to explain myself until everyone felt comfortable again. ID in single quotes T. Instead, I opened the drawer where I'd put the receipts and paperwork the day before. I sat at the dining table and went through them again, slower this time. Not to hurt myself, to remind myself every page had a memory attached to it. A phone call late at night, a promise made casually, a thank you that never came. I realized something then that made me stop cold. No one had ever asked me if I was okay giving this much. They just assumed I was. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. Not a polite one, not hesitant, confident. I opened it, and there he was, my son-in-law, standing on my porch like he owned the place. Hands in his jacket pockets, jaw set. The expression of a man who expected answers. "Hey," he said. I stepped aside, not inviting him in so much as allowing him to enter. He walked into the living room, eyes scanning the space like he was looking for evidence. Of what? I didn't know. Guilt, maybe, or consequences. "You didn't answer," he said. "I was busy," I replied. He sat without asking, leaning forward like this was a business meeting. "Karen's upset," he said. "She's been trying to reach you." I waited. "Well," he pressed. "Well, what?" I asked. "Aren't you going to say anything?" "I'm listening," he exhaled sharply. "She didn't mean for it to happen like this, but it did. We didn't think you'd want to come," he said. "It was a lot of walking. Long flights, heat. You didn't ask." He shook his head, frustrated. "We were trying to be considerate." "No," I said calmly. "You were trying to be comfortable." That landed. He leaned back, arms crossed. "So this is about the money now." "It's about respect," I said. "The money just made it obvious." He scoffed. "You've always helped. That's who you are." "That's who I was allowed to be," I corrected. He stood up, pacing once across the room. "Karen feels awful." "Good," I said. He stopped. "Good. Guilt is how people learn," I said. "I'm not protecting her from it anymore." He glanced at the photo on the mantel, my husband, smiling like he always did, unaware of how quiet things would get later. I saw the thought forming before he spoke. He wouldn't have liked this. I looked at him, really looked. "He would have never lied to me," I said, "and he would have never left me behind." That ended the conversation. He left without saying goodbye. The door clicked shut, and for the first time, I didn't feel shaky afterward. I felt steady. That afternoon, I went for a walk not far, just around the block. The air smelled like cut grass and warm pavement. I noticed things I usually rushed past. A woman watering her plants. A dog pulling its owner down the sidewalk. Life kept moving, whether I explained myself or not. When I got back, my daughter was waiting. She stood at the edge of the driveway, arms folded tight across her chest. Defensive, nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. Inside, we sat across from each other at the table, where I spent years writing checks for her life. I didn't think you'd notice, she said quietly. That hurt more than I expected. You didn't think I'd matter, I said. That's not what I meant, but it's what happened. She looked down at her hands. You've always been there, always said yes. I guess I stopped thinking about what that cost you. I paid it, I said, every time. She started crying then, not loudly, not performative, just tired tears. I'm sorry, she said. I believe you, I replied, but I'm not undoing what I changed. She nodded slowly. So, what now? Now, I said. I stopped explaining myself. We sat in silence after that. Not angry, not warm either, just honest. She hugged me when she left. I didn't pull away. I didn't hold on. That night, I cooked dinner for one. Real dinner. Sat at the table and ate without rushing. I didn't check my phone. The next morning, I went somewhere I hadn't been in years, the community center down the street. There was a flyer taped crookedly to the board. Silver Circle Coffee. Conversation. No fixing required. I almost turned around. Then I didn't. Inside, no one asked who I belonged to. No one asked what I'd done for my kids. We talked about aches, books, grocery prices. One woman said her son hadn't called in months. Another said she stopped begging. No one judged. I walked home lighter. That evening, my granddaughter called. Her voice sounded different, quieter. I think I messed up, she said. I listened. I knew about the trip, she admitted. I thought you said no. Assumptions hurt people, I said gently. I want to come see you, she said. If that's okay. It is, I replied. Anytime. When we hung up, I sat on the porch as the sun went down. The wind chimes moved softly. The same ones my husband hung years ago. For the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. And somewhere in that quiet, I realized something else. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment everyone else realized I wasn't going to carry it for them anymore. My granddaughter came over on a Sunday afternoon. She didn't knock the way her parents do. She texted first. I'm outside. Is now okay. That alone told me she understood something the others didn't. When I opened the door, she was sitting on the porch step with her knees pulled up, hoodie too big for her frame, hair pulled into a messy knot like she hadn't tried too hard to look put together. No performance, no rehearsed apology waiting to spill out. Just her. Hey, Grandma, she said, standing up slowly, like she wasn't sure how close she was allowed to be. Hey, I replied. Come in. She stepped inside and paused, glancing around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. Same couch, same throw blanket, same photo of my husband on the mantel, smiling like he always did, unaware of how quiet things would get later. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where checks had been written, promises made, silence swallowed. I didn't know, she said finally. Not really. I waited. They told me the trip was canceled. She continued. Then it just happened, and I didn't question it. Why? I asked. She shrugged. Because it was easier. That honesty mattered. I assumed, she said. I assumed you didn't want to go, that you'd say no anyway. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't defending herself. She wasn't asking to be forgiven. She was just telling the truth the way people do when they're scared, but done pretending. Do you know what hurts most? I asked. She shook her head. That no one thought I might still want new things, I said. New places, new memories. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I see you, she said quietly. I do now. I believed her. Not because I needed to, because she said it without rushing past the weight of it. She reached into her bag and pulled out something small. A handmade photo album. Cardboard cover wrapped in fabric. The spine stitched unevenly. Inside weren't the pictures I'd seen online. No staged smiles. No wide shots of beaches. These were quieter. Her reading on a balcony. A seashell with my name written on it. The edge of a sunset caught mid-fade. On the last page, a note written in blue ink. I should have shared this with you the first time. I want to do better. I closed the album carefully. Thank you, I said. We sat there in silence that didn't ask to be filled. After she left, I placed the album on the shelf beside the others. It didn't match. It wasn't labeled in my husband's handwriting. That felt right. The next morning, I brewed coffee and poured it into the good china. Not because anyone was coming over, because I wanted to. For years, those cups sat untouched, waiting for holidays or guests who never stayed long. That morning, I realized something simple and dangerous. I didn't need permission to enjoy my own things. Around mid-morning, the lawyer called. The documents were ready. Everything I'd asked for had been finalized. Accounts separated. Authority changed. No loopholes. Are you sure? She asked gently. Yes, I said. When I hung up, I stood in the kitchen, holding the phone like it weighed more than it should. Not from fear, from finality. That afternoon, I went grocery shopping and bought exactly what I liked. Nothing anyone else preferred. Salmon, strawberries, a small container of mint chip ice cream. I ate dinner alone and didn't apologize to the empty chairs. The phone rang later. I didn't answer. The next day, my daughter showed up again. This time, she didn't bring excuses. She brought lemon squares in a cardboard box, the kind she used to bake when she still came by without needing something. I wanted to try, she said, holding the box out like an offering. Then don't start with words, I said. Start with time. She nodded. We sat. We talked about my granddaughter, about classes, about small things that didn't require repair. For a moment, It almost felt normal. But I didn't confuse comfort with progress. When she left, she hugged me tighter than before. Not desperate, just real. That night, I pulled out my sewing box. Not because anything needed fixing. I just wanted the weight of something familiar in my hands. Scissors, thread. Buttons saved for no reason other than memory. The next morning, I walked to the community center again. The group was bigger this time. New faces, same warmth. One woman talked about finally saying no to her son. Another laughed about learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. No one asked me to explain myself. I walked home later. That afternoon, my son-in-law called. I answered. "We're confused," he said without greeting. "You're changing things, cutting access, acting like we did something unforgivable." "You lied to me," I said. "And then you expected me to pretend it didn't matter. It wasn't personal. It always is," I replied. He sighed. "So what now?" "Now," I said. I stopped shrinking to keep things smooth. There was silence on the line. He hung up. Later that evening, my daughter texted. "He's angry." "That's allowed," I replied. That weekend, my granddaughter came back. This time without warning. She brought a painting she'd made of my porch. The worn railing, the flickering light. She'd captured every detail. "I thought maybe you'd want it inside," she said, "for when it's cold." I held it longer than necessary. "I'm not cold yet," I said. She smiled. We made tea. She talked about school. I listened not as someone being filled in, but as someone finally being included without conditions. After she left, I stood in the doorway holding the painting against my chest. This life, the quiet one, the chosen one, was starting to feel like mine. A letter arrived 2 days later from my son-in-law. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. He wrote that he didn't expect forgiveness, that he'd leaned on me more than he should have, that maybe he hadn't said thank you enough. I folded it and placed it in a drawer. Not acceptance, not rejection, just acknowledgement. That night, I slept deeply, not because everything was fixed, because I wasn't chasing resolution anymore. The next morning, I woke up early and walked outside before the street fully stirred. The sky was pale blue, still deciding what it wanted to be. I stood there and realized something quietly powerful. I hadn't lost my family. I'd lost the version of myself that kept disappearing to make them comfortable. And I didn't want her back. Not this time. "Would you like to leave a note?" she asked. "For internal records." "Yes," I said. She waited. "To Lucy," I said slowly. "This is for the times you showed up without being asked." She typed it in. Didn't comment. Didn't soften it. Before I left, I asked her to remove the joint access my daughter had set up years ago just in case. Clara handled it without hesitation. As I signed the final form, I saw something shift in her expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. When I stepped back outside, the air felt different, not dramatic, just clear. That evening, I cooked dinner and set the table for one again. This time, I didn't even notice the empty chairs. The phone rang halfway through the meal. I let it ring. Later that night, I checked the voicemail. My daughter's voice. Careful, controlled. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't delete it. I didn't return it either. The next day, my son-in-law showed up without calling. He knocked once, hard, like knocking might force cooperation. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. "We need to talk," he said. "You already said that on the phone," I replied. He exhaled sharply. "You changed the accounts." "Yes, you cut us out." "I chose myself," I said. "That money was for the family. That money was mine." He stepped forward, frustration written all over his face. "You're acting like this is some kind of punishment." "It's not," I said calmly. "It's a boundary. You've never had boundaries," he snapped. I held his gaze. "That's not the compliment you think it is." He looked stunned by that. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "families don't work like this. Families also don't lie." I replied, "And they don't decide someone's value based on convenience." He shook his head. "Karen's scared." "That's allowed," I said. "So am I. I just stopped letting it make my decisions." He stared at me for a long moment, then laughed once, sharp and humorless. "This isn't you," he said. "No," I agreed. "It's who I am when I stop disappearing." That ended it. He left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart steady, not racing, not shaking, steady. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. On Sunday, my granddaughter came over again. This time she didn't hesitate at the door. She walked in like she belonged. "Mom's upset," she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I know," I replied. "She's scared she's losing you." I looked at her. "I'm not going anywhere." "But things won't be the same," she said. "That's true," I agreed. "And that's okay," she nodded slowly. I think that's what scares them." We sat together on the couch, the painting she'd made hanging on the wall now, the porch light glowing softly in watercolor. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why didn't you say no earlier?" The question landed gently but firmly. "I didn't think I was allowed to," I said. And by the time I realized I'd forgotten how. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I don't want to forget that." "Then don't," I said. That evening, I took a walk alone. The street lights came on one by one. Porches glowed. Windows framed other people's lives. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing outside of it all. I was inside my own. Back home, I opened the small notebook I kept by the phone, the one for things I didn't want to forget. I turned to a blank page and wrote, "I don't owe anyone my silence." I closed the notebook, The phone buzzed once more that night. A text from my daughter. I don't know how to do this without you fixing it. I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed back, you don't need me to fix it. You need to face it. I set the phone down. Outside, the wind chimes moved softly, catching the air just enough to make themselves heard. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next call. I was ready for whatever came next. The calls didn't stop. They just changed shape. At first, it was confusion, then frustration. After that, something sharp or panic, dressed up as concern. I could hear it in the pauses between words, in the way sentences circled instead of landing. I let most of them go to voicemail, not because I was trying to teach anyone a lesson, but because I was finally listening to my own body. Every time the phone rang and my chest stayed calm, I knew I was doing the right thing. One afternoon, I played them back, not all at once, one at a time. My daughter's voice first, soft, careful. I don't know how to do this without you fixing it. My son-in-law next, short. Controlled. We need to talk logistics. Logistics. Like I was a storage unit they were losing access to. I deleted that one. The next call came from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Almost. Double quotes, Mrs. Harris, a woman asked when I answered. This is the financial office at the university. My granddaughter's school. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with clarity. Yes, I said. We're calling because a payment arrangement was recently changed. We just wanted to confirm. I made that change, I said, and it stands. There was a pause, papers shuffling. All right, she said. Thank you for confirming. That was it. No argument. No guilt. No emotional negotiation. I hung up and realized something that made me laugh out loud. Strangers respected my boundaries faster than my own family ever had. That evening, my granddaughter came over again. She didn't bring anything this time. No album, no painting, just herself. They're spiraling, she said, dropping her bag by the door. Not about the money, about control, I nodded. People confuse those two. She sat at the table and watched me slice vegetables for dinner. Mom keeps saying she doesn't recognize you. I smiled faintly. That might be the first honest thing she's said in a while. She's scared, my granddaughter said, not of losing money, of losing access. I set the knife down and looked at her. Access to what? To you. We let that sit. I don't want to be in the middle. She added quickly, I just want everyone to stop acting like you disappeared. I didn't disappear, I said. I stepped forward. That night, after she left, I pulled out an old photo album, one I hadn't opened in years. Thick pages, plastic sleeves yellowed at the edges. There I was, decades younger, standing behind a birthday cake, smiling too wide, hands mid-clap. Always in the background, always centered around someone else's moment. I wasn't sad looking at it. I was observant. The next morning, my daughter showed up unannounced. She stood on the porch longer this time before knocking, like she was hoping the door might open on its own. When I answered, she didn't rush past me. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She looked tired, not the dramatic kind of tired, the quiet kind that comes when your usual tools stop working. "I don't know how to do this," she said, standing in the living room like a guest waiting for instructions. "You're doing it now," I replied. She sat, folded her hands, unfolded them again. "I feel like everything changed overnight." "It didn't," I said. "It just stopped being hidden." She nodded slowly. "Greg thinks you're punishing us." "I'm not," I said. "I'm opting out." She looked up. "From us? From being the backup plan?" I said. "From being the safety net everyone jumps on and forgets to thank." She swallowed. "I didn't know you felt that way." "That's because I didn't say it," I said. "I thought love meant silence." She stared at the floor for a long moment. "I'm angry," she admitted. "Not at you, at myself. That's not my burden to carry anymore," I said gently. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. "What happens now?" she asked. I thought about that. "Now," I said, "we learn how to show up without expecting to be rescued." She didn't argue. When she left, she hugged me not tightly, not desperately, just present. That mattered. 2 days later, my son-in-law called again. I answered. "You really changed everything," he said. No greeting. "Yes, you put us in a tough spot. You were already there," I replied. "You just didn't notice because I was standing under it." Silence. "So that's it?" he asked. "You're done?" "I'm done being assumed," I said. "That's different." He didn't respond. After the call, I sat on the porch and watched the light change. The wind moved through the chimes softly, not demanding attention, just existing. For the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to justify my peace. That weekend, my granddaughter invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. No parents, no tension, no performances. We cooked together, burned the garlic, laughed about it, ate straight from the pan. "I like you like this," she said at one point. Not tired, not apologizing. "So do I replied. When I got home that night, there was an email waiting for me from my son-in-law's office. Subject line, "Update needed." I didn't open it. Instead, I turned off the computer, made tea, and sat at the table with my notebook. The one for things I didn't want to forget. I wrote one sentence. "I am not a resource. I am a person." I closed the notebook and felt something settle deep in my chest. Not relief, resolve. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my daughter. "I'm starting to understand." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I replied, Understanding comes after discomfort. Stay with it. I set the phone down. Outside, the day moved forward without waiting for permission. And for the first time, I wasn't too worried about what would happen if I didn't show up to save everyone else. I was finally curious about what would happen if I showed up for myself. The email sat unopened for 3 days. Not because I was afraid of it, because I wasn't curious anymore. That was new. Curiosity used to drive me. What did they need? What went wrong? How could I smooth it over before it got worse? Now, the absence of curiosity felt like standing on solid ground after years on a moving deck. On the 4th morning, I deleted the email without opening it. I didn't feel brave. I felt finished. That afternoon, my daughter called again. This time, she didn't start with an apology or a question. She just said, "Can we have dinner?" All of us. I pictured it instantly. The careful seating, the polite tone, the pauses where no one knew what to say next. The unspoken hope that food might fix what honesty hadn't. "Why?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because we need to talk without anyone walking away." I smiled at that. I'm not the one who walked away. Another pause. Longer this time. "Sunday," she said, "if you're willing." I thought about my granddaughter, about the way she'd shown up without needing an audience, about the difference between a performance and a conversation. "I'll come," I said, "but I won't manage the room." "I understand," she replied. I wasn't sure she did, but she would. Sunday arrived quietly. I didn't bring anything with me. No dessert, no flowers, no peace offering wrapped in foil. For once, I wasn't arriving as a contribution. I arrived as a person. My son-in-law opened the door. He looked surprised to see me alone, like he'd expected me to carry something in with me besides myself. He stepped aside without a word. The table was set carefully, too carefully, plates lined up evenly, glasses filled halfway, a meal planned to avoid complaints. My granddaughter hugged me first, tight, honest. She pulled out the chair. Beside hers, the one with the best light, the clearest view of the room. That didn't go unnoticed. Dinner started stiff. Polite questions, safe topics, work updates, school stories. No one mentioned Hawaii. No one mentioned money. I let them talk. Halfway through, my daughter cleared her throat. "I want to say something," she said. Everyone stopped moving. She looked at me, not quickly, not defensively, just directly. "I didn't realize how much I expected you to absorb," she said. "Your time, your money, your silence." My son-in-law shifted in his seat, but didn't interrupt. I told myself it was normal. She continued, "that this is what families do." But I also told myself you didn't mind, and I never actually asked. She paused, eyes glassy. "That's on me." The room stayed quiet. I didn't rush in to reassure her. I didn't minimize it. I let the truth sit where it belonged. My son-in-law spoke next, his voice lower than usual. I didn't think about what it felt like, he said, to find out the way you did. You didn't think about me at all. I replied calmly. He nodded once. That's fair. That surprised everyone, including me. I thought helping was how you showed love, he added. So I took it. I showed love, I said. You took comfort. No one argued. My granddaughter reached for my hand under the table. She didn't squeeze it. She just rested her fingers there, steady. I don't want this to turn into a speech, I said finally, so I'll keep it simple. I looked at each of them in turn. I won't be lied to. I won't be assumed. And I won't be included only when it's convenient. I let that land. I'm not cutting anyone out, I continued. I'm just no longer filling the gaps you don't want to face. Silence followed, not awkward, not hostile, not heavy. Necessary. Dinner ended without drama. No shouting, no tears. No sudden hugs to tie it up neatly. That felt right. When I stood to leave, my daughter walked me to the door. I don't know what this looks like now, she said quietly. Neither do I replied. That's the point. On the walk home, the night felt different. Not forgiving, not angry, honest. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my son-in-law. I'm embarrassed it took this long. I didn't reply, not because it didn't matter, because it didn't require anything from me. Later that day, the university called again. This time, just to confirm a schedule, routine, neutral, clean. That call ended faster than any conversation I'd ever had with my own family. I laughed after I hung up. Strange what clarity does. Midweek, my granddaughter stopped by with coffee. No announcement. No explanation. They're quiet, she said, setting the cups down. Not angry. Just adjusting. Good, I said. She watched me for a moment. You're different, I know. Not colder, she added quickly. Just clearer, I nodded. That's the goal. That night, I sat at my table and opened the notebook again. The one that now held more truth than plans. I wrote, if someone needs me to be smaller to stay, they don't get to stay. I closed it. The phone rang later. A number I didn't recognize. Hi, a woman said. You don't know me, but I'm Greg's sister. I hadn't heard from her in years. I just wanted to say, she continued, I wish my mother had done what you're doing. Maybe she wouldn't have disappeared inside us. My throat tightened not with sadness, but recognition. Thank you, I said. After the call, I sat very still. For the first time, I understood something clearly. This wasn't just changing my family. It was interrupting a pattern. And patterns don't break quietly. They resist. They test. They push back. That night, I slept deeply anyway. Because for once, whatever came next wouldn't be managed by me. It would be faced by them. The quiet after that dinner felt different. Not tense, not peaceful either. Unsettled, like a house after a storm, where nothing is broken, but everything has shifted just enough to remind you it won't go back to the way it was. For years, I'd been the one who stepped in before discomfort could grow teeth. I filled silences. I offered solutions. I smoothed edges before anyone had to sit with them. Now, I didn't, and that changed the rhythm of everything. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter. "Do you know if the insurance covers this kind of repair?" I stared at the message longer than necessary. Old instincts woke up immediately. The part of me that knew exactly where the paperwork was, who to call, what questions to ask, how to get answers without sounding difficult. That part waited for my fingers to move. They didn't. I typed back one sentence. "I'm not sure. You should call them." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Okay," she finally replied. That was it. No follow dash up dot, no guilt, no escalation. I set the phone down and felt something unexpected dot relief. Later that day, my son-in-law tried again. He didn't text. He called. I answered. "Hey," he said. "Careful now. Quick question." I waited. "The bank's asking about some documentation. Do you remember?" "No," I said. There was a pause. Not offended, just surprised. "Okay," he said. "I'll figure it out." When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, letting the quiet settle. No explanation needed, no argument required, just a boundary holding. That night, my granddaughter came over. She brought takeout and dropped it on the table like she belonged there, which she did. "They're learning," she said between bites. "It's not graceful. It doesn't have to be," I replied. She smiled. "You used to catch them every time they stumbled." "I know. Now you don't." "Nope." She studied me for a second. "Does it feel mean?" I shook my head. "It feels honest." The next few weeks were like that. Small moments, small tests. A question asked and redirected. A problem presented and returned. A pause where I used to rush in. Each time, the world didn't end. In fact, something else started happening. They began talking to each other instead of through me. I noticed it when my daughter mentioned she and Greg had argued about finances. Not blamed me, not referenced me, just dealt with it. "I didn't know how much you buffered us," she admitted once, almost to herself. "I did," I said. She laughed softly. "Yeah, you did." One afternoon, I ran into a neighbor at the grocery store. She asked how my kids were doing. I almost answered automatically busy. Good, figuring things out. Instead, I said, "They're learning." The words surprised me. They were true. That weekend, my granddaughter invited me to an art show at her college. I went, sat in the front row, clapped loudly. Her parents sat 2 rows back. They didn't look at me for reassurance. They didn't wait for my reaction. They just watched her. Afterward, my daughter hugged me. "I'm glad you came." "So am I said. No weight attached. No unspoken expectation. Later that night, alone again, I opened my notebook. I didn't write a rule. I wrote a reminder. Let them feel the consequences of their choices. That's not cruelty. That's growth. A few days later, my son-in-law sent another text. "We're trying to plan Thanksgiving. Can we talk?" I stared at it, then replied, "We can talk. I won't coordinate." There was a pause. "Fair," he wrote back. Thanksgiving was quieter than past years. Less food, fewer traditions, more honesty. I brought one dish, not 3. I left early, not apologizing. No one complained. Driving home, I realized something subtle but powerful. They weren't angry anymore. They were adjusting, and adjustment looks a lot like distance at first. The phone rang that evening. My daughter. "I just wanted to say," she said, "I see now how much I leaned on you to hold everything together." I waited. "I'm tired," she admitted, "but I think that means I'm finally carrying my own stuff." I smiled to myself. That's usually how it works. There was a pause. "I miss you," she said. "I'm still here," I replied, "just not in the same position." That mattered. After we hung up, I stood by the window and watched the streetlights come on one by one. Life continued, unbothered by my decisions. For the first time, I wasn't measuring my worth by how often I was needed. I was measuring it by how clearly I could stand in my own space. That night, I slept easily, not because everything was settled, but because I finally trusted what I was building. And I knew something else was coming. Not conflict, not collapse, a choice. One that would decide what kind of relationship we were actually going to have from here on out. The invitation came quietly. No long explanation. No apology wrapped in paragraphs. Just a text from my daughter late one evening. "We're thinking about moving." I stared at the words longer than I expected to. Moving had always been something that happened to me, not something that invited my opinion. New schools, new jobs, new reasons I was supposed to understand. I'd been informed, not consulted. This felt different. Where? I typed back. "Out of state." She replied, "Nothing decided yet. We just wanted to tell you first." I set the phone down and felt that familiar to gold reflexes stirring. Questions lining up in my head. Budgets, timelines, logistics. Who would need what and when? I let them pass. When I picked the phone up again, I typed one sentence. "Thank you for telling me." 3 dots appeared. Paused. Disappeared. A minute later. "Do you have any thoughts?" I smiled, just a little. "I trust you to decide what's right for your family," I wrote. That was the truth, and it landed heavier than advice ever would. The next day, my granddaughter stopped by. She didn't sit down right away. She paced the kitchen, nervous energy buzzing around her like static. "They're really doing it," she said, "or at least thinking about it." "How do you feel?" I asked. She shrugged, double quotes, scared, excited. "Guilty. All at once. Yeah, that means you're paying attention," I said. She leaned against the counter. "They keep asking what you think. And what do you want to tell them?" She thought for a moment. "That I don't want you to be the reason they stay, or the reason they go." I nodded, double quotes, good. "Don't let anyone put that on you." That evening, my son-in-law called. His tone was different now, less certain, more careful. "We're not asking for permission," he said quickly. "Just input." "I don't have any," I replied. A pause. "You always did before." "I know." Another pause. Longer. "Does that bother you?" I considered the question honestly. "No," I said. "It frees me." He let out a breath I didn't realize he was holding. "Okay." When the call ended, I noticed something important. No one had asked me to fix anything. They were asking to be seen. That weekend, we all sat down together again. Not at a table, on the back porch, where conversations don't feel like meetings. They talked about job offers, school options, the fear of starting over. I listened without taking notes in my head, without planning solutions. At one point, my daughter looked at me and said, "I don't want to repeat what we did before." I didn't answer right away. "Then don't," I said finally. "Make a different choice." "On purpose," she nodded. My granddaughter reached for my hand. "Whatever happens," she said, "I don't want to lose this." "You won't," I replied. "This isn't location-based." That night, after everyone left, I walked through my house slowly, not counting rooms, not imagining absence, just noticing. The chair by the window where I read in the mornings, the hook by the door where my keys always land, the porch light my granddaughter painted so carefully. This place didn't feel like something I was about to lose. It felt like something I carried with me. A few days later, the decision was made. They were moving, not immediately, not dramatically, just happening. My daughter called to tell me. Her voice was steady. "We're going to take the offer," she said. "I wanted you to hear it from me." "I'm glad you did," I replied. She hesitated. "I'm afraid you'll feel left behind." I chose my words carefully. "I felt left behind when you went without me," I said. "This is different." "How?" "This time," I said, "you didn't erase me to move forward." She was quiet for a moment. "Will you come visit?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "when I choose to. Not if. Not whenever you need. When I choose to." After we hung up, I sat with that for a while. Choice changes the shape of everything. The next weeks were full of motion boxes, lists, goodbyes. I wasn't in the middle of it. I wasn't expected to be. I helped once watching my granddaughter while they toured a school. One afternoon, on my terms, that mattered. The night before they left, my granddaughter stayed over. We sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the light fade. "Are you scared?" she asked. "No," I said. "Are you?" "A little." "That's okay," I replied. "Just don't let fear decide everything." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I don't think I could have done this if you hadn't changed first." That stopped me. "What do you mean?" "You showed us it was possible to stop disappearing," she said. I didn't answer right away. When they drove away the next morning, I stood on the porch and watched until the car turned the corner. I didn't wave frantically. I didn't feel hollow. I felt tall. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from my daughter. "We made it to the highway. Thank you for everything and for not fixing this for us." I smiled. Then another text, this one from my granddaughter. "I see you." I closed my eyes and let that land. That evening, I sat at my table and opened my notebook one more time. I wrote, "Letting go isn't losing. It's choosing not to hold what isn't yours anymore." I closed the notebook and set it aside. The house was quiet again, but this time, the quiet felt like a beginning, because I knew the next chapter wouldn't be about who left. It would be about who stayed, and who I finally allowed myself to become. The house didn't echo the way people warn you it will. That surprised me. When the car disappeared down the street that morning, I expected the walls to feel hollow, like they were waiting for footsteps that weren't coming back. I expected the quiet to sting. It didn't. It settled. I stood on the porch longer than necessary, hands tucked into my sweater sleeves, watching the light move across the yard. The wind chimes stirred once, then went still, like they understood this wasn't a moment that needed commentary. Inside, everything was exactly where I left it. The chair by the window, the mug drying on the rack, the painting my granddaughter made hanging slightly crooked, just the way she insisted it should be. Nothing felt taken from me. That was new. For years, departures felt like subtraction, like something valuable had been removed, and I was expected to adjust quietly. This time, nothing had been pulled out of my hands. They had moved forward. I had stayed standing. The first few days passed gently. No frantic calls, no last-minute questions, just short check-ins. We made it. Boxes everywhere. School looks good. I responded when I wanted to, not out of obligation, not out of fear that silence might be misunderstood. Choice makes communication lighter. Midweek, I woke up with an urge I hadn't felt in years. I wanted to rearrange the living room, not because anything was broken, not because I needed a project, just because I could. I moved the couch closer to the window, pulled the reading chair into the corner where the afternoon sun hits, took a stack of old magazines and recycled them without flipping through. I noticed how often I used to save things just in case someone needed it, just in case someone came back, just in case. That afternoon, I drove to the thrift store and donated a box of things I'd been holding onto for reasons I could no longer remember. The woman at the counter smiled and said, "You sure about this?" "Yes," I said. "Someone else can use them now." Walking back to the car, I felt oddly proud, not of the donation, of the certainty. The phone rang that evening. My daughter. "I keep wanting to ask you things," she admitted. Then I stopped myself. "Why?" I asked. "Because I want to know if I actually need the answer," she said, "or if I'm just used to leaning." I smiled into the quiet kitchen. "That's a good pause to learn." She laughed softly. "You're different." "So are you," I replied. After we hung up, I realized something subtle, but important. Our conversations had changed shape. They weren't transactions anymore. They were exchanges. A few days later, my granddaughter called, not to update me, not to ask for help. "I just wanted to tell you something," she said. I waited. "I told my roommate about you," she continued, "about how you stopped letting people decide for you. She said she wants to be like that when she's older." I swallowed. "That's kind of you," I said. "No," she corrected gently. "That's kind of you." That night, I sat with that for a long time. Legacy doesn't always look like inheritance. Sometimes it looks like permission. The community center group met again that Thursday. I almost didn't go. Old habits whisper that consistency invites dependence. But this time, I wanted to be there. We sat in our circle of folding chairs, coffee cups balanced carefully, stories spilling out without urgency. One woman talked about finally telling her son she couldn't lend money anymore. Another laughed about learning how to enjoy Sundays alone. When it was my turn, I didn't tell the whole story. I said, "I spent a long time thinking love meant being useful. Now I think it means being honest." Heads nodded. Someone reached out and squeezed my hand. On the walk home, the air felt lighter than it had in years. That evening, an email came in from my son-in-law. Not about money, not about logistics, just a short note. "I wanted you to know we're figuring it out. It's uncomfortable, but it's ours. Thank you for letting it be." I read it twice. Then I closed the laptop without replying. Not because it didn't matter, because it didn't need to be answered. The weekend came quietly. I made breakfast for one and ate it slowly. No distractions. Read a book in the afternoon sun. Took a nap without guilt. At some point, I realized something that stopped me cold. I wasn't waiting for anything. Not the next call. Not the next apology. Not the next crisis that would prove I was still needed. I had spent decades measuring my worth by how quickly I responded. Now, I was measuring it by how fully I lived in my own hours. On Sunday evening, My granddaughter video called me. She held the phone up to show me her new room. Posters half hung, boxes still unpacked. It doesn't feel like home yet, she said. It will, I replied. But even if it doesn't right away, you will, she smiled. You always say things like that. I earned the right, I said. Before we hung up, she said it again, clear, steady. I see you. After the call ended, I sat very still, not because I was overwhelmed, because something had completed itself. That night, I opened my notebook one last time. I didn't write a rule. I didn't write a boundary. I wrote a sentence that felt like truth finally spoken aloud. I am not waiting anymore. I closed the notebook and placed it back in the drawer. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of me, and I knew the last part of this story wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be dramatic. It would be about what happens after you stop disappearing and start living in plain sight. I woke up before the sun. No alarm. No reason I could explain. Just that soft, steady feeling that the day was mine before it belonged to anyone else. The house was still, not asleep, just resting. I padded into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and stood by the window while the sky slowly lightened. That deep blue that comes right before morning, when the world hasn't decided what it's going to be yet. For years, mornings meant readiness. Who might call? What might go wrong? What I might need to fix before the day could really start. That morning, there was none of that. Just tea steaming gently, the clock ticking without urgency, my own breathing, slow and even. I thought about how much of my life had been lived on standby, always available, always flexible, always ready to step in before anyone else had to feel uncomfortable. I used to think that made me loving. Now I knew better. Love that costs you your presence isn't love. It's erasure with good manners. Later that morning, I walked to the community center. Silver Circle was fuller than ever. New faces, familiar ones, the smell of coffee, and something sweet someone had baked. We talked about small things at first. Knees. Weather. A book someone couldn't put down. Then one woman said, "My daughter hasn't called in 2 months. I used to chase it. Now I don't." No one rushed to comfort her. No one offered advice. We just nodded. That kind of understanding doesn't need fixing. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't tell the whole story. I didn't need to. I spent most of my life being needed, I said. Now I'm learning how to be known. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then someone reached across the circle and squeezed my hand. On the walk home, the sun warmed my face. A boy sat on the sidewalk drawing with chalk. He looked up and smiled at me, like it was the easiest thing in the world. It was enough. That afternoon, I cleaned the house slowly, not scrubbing, not organizing for anyone else, just touching things, straightening what I felt like straightening. leaving the rest alone. I found an old box in the back of a closet. Inside were cards I'd saved over the years. Thank you notes, birthday cards, a few folded drawings from when my granddaughter was small. I didn't cry. I smiled. These weren't debts. They were moments, and they were complete. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. We unpacked the last box today. I tapped back. That's a good feeling. A few seconds later, I wish you were here. I stared at that line longer than I needed to. Then I replied, I am just not in the way I used to be. She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was simple, I know, and I'm learning how to be okay with that. That mattered more than an apology ever could. Later, my granddaughter called. She didn't show me her room this time. She just talked about her classes, her plans, the small fear she felt about becoming someone new. I think I understand something now, she said. You didn't stop loving us. You just stopped leaving yourself behind. Yes, I said quietly. That's exactly it. Before we hung up, she said it one more time. I see you. I closed my eyes and let it land where it belonged. That evening, I cooked dinner and set the table for one, not as a statement, not as a protest, but as a fact. I ate while the food was still hot. I washed the dishes right away. I didn't save anything for later. Nothing needed saving anymore. After dinner, I sat on the porch. The wind chimes moved gently, catching the air just enough to remind me they were there. The same ones my husband hung years ago. I thought about him then, about how he used to say, "You don't owe everyone your whole self." I wish I'd listened sooner, but maybe some lessons only arrive when you're finally quiet enough to hear them. As the light faded, I didn't feel lonely. I felt finished with a chapter. Not bitter, not sad, just complete. If someone hears this story and feels seen, that's enough. If someone realizes they don't have to disappear to be loved, even better. And if someone decides today to choose themselves without asking permission, then this life I rebuilt quietly, piece by piece, will have reached further than I ever imagined. They told me the trip was canceled. They smiled on a beach without me. But what I found when they left was something far better. My name, my voice, my life, and this time, I'm not giving it away.